Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio, One Child Abuse Survivor to Another Restoration. It's a new format that I'm just using to share with anyone who's interested my process of the beginning of my healing journey and sort of take a look at how it sort of came about, what actually was the catalyst, and we'll go from there. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And, I appreciate it. So we'll get right started. I'm not going to go back and review really what we were talking about on the last show, and that was just an introductory show. But this morning what I thought I would talk about is what exactly caused me to really begin my healing journey, and what it was that pushed me to that point to actually reach out and begin doing something in a positive direction regarding my healing and from child abuse issues that were haunting me and really plaguing me my whole entire life. And periods of time I could get through, no problem. It didn't seem to affect me that much. And then other times in my life it was affecting me in a serious manner, and that was just bringing me to the point of suicidal tendencies, wanting to self-injure, self-sabotaging, just not coping well, and a lot of anger and rage, a lot of issues going on in my life that really were plaguing me on a daily basis. So that's where I was at when I began my healing journey. I just felt like I couldn't go on the same way anymore. I'd been doing it for cognitively probably for 38 years or 36 years anyway. And I started, at the age of 42, I started to go downhill again. And it all started because, here's where it started. My dad, who I really never had a great relationship with, and people listening to my shows previously would know the reasons why. He was abusive to my whole entire family. And just we never developed any kind of a proper relationship. And he was, after my mom passed away, he was on his own. He was living in Arizona. He's an old man. He's an elderly man, and he was living on his own. He was doing really quite well down there in Arizona, had lots of friends, and he had people around him that were supporting him and helping him out because his own family really can't deal with him, and he can't deal with his own family. So he made his own little family down in Arizona, and decided at one point that he wanted to move up here to Canada. And this was a couple years after I actually had started my healing journey, but I didn't do a whole lot of work in my healing journey. At the age of 42, I was sitting on the couch just thinking I couldn't go on after work one night. Just the rage and the whole trauma, I guess, whether it was PTSD or what, I don't know, because I wasn't diagnosed, but I really couldn't deal anymore. I just couldn't cope, I couldn't deal, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And that one particular night, which was, I believe it has to be April of 2007, I actually decided that I would not kill myself, that I would not self-injure, that I was going to get help, and that I was going to survive and make it. And it was a turning point in my life, really. And within a couple of years, I hadn't done a whole lot of healing work, but I had done some looking into the issues of child abuse and why I was doing what I was doing, and thinking a lot about the whole big picture of what had happened in our family, putting it together, tying things together, and getting a grip on the reality that was my life for my whole life, really, growing up with these monsters, which I call monsters, but with my parents and our dysfunctional family. So within a couple of years after that, I was feeling pretty good. I was reading the Bible and was very much enjoying my newfound hope, and that was God. I had a problem. I had spiritual issues. I was angry with God. I was not interested in Christianity at all. My dad was a Christian, and he is a Christian. And I could never figure out how a Christian could do these things, someone who professes to have God's love very manifestation of God and then the Lord Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit manifested in their life, could do these things to his family, to his wife, to his children, and then not take any responsibility for it and not own up to it and not try to make it right. And so I had a problem with Christianity, but I really, at the age of 42, I had an experience that changed all that for me, and I'm very thankful. Because what happened was I decided to live and not die, and I decided to get help and not suffer in silence, and I decided that I was going to make it and that I was going to not give up, and that and I owe that really to God. And so within a couple of years of that, I thought things were going pretty good, and I was 44 at that time. 2 years later, my dad had contacted me to see if he could move up here. He had already previously contacted my brother and one of the last remaining siblings, which is me, my sister, and my brother. And my brother said no, you could not come and stay with them, with him and his wife. He was like, put his foot down. He's like, no, you're not coming here, sorry. And so he called my other sister. He talked to her, and she said no. She said, no, you cannot stay with me, because my dad needed someplace to stay for a year in order to get Canadian benefits, because he's Canadian. He was living in the States as a landed immigrant, never gave up his Canadian citizenship, and that's why we all have Canadian citizenship. Well, my family was all born up here except for me. And so he wanted to come back up, but in order to get into a senior's lodge and get some help with his, medical stuff and everything like that, he had to live here for a year. So he was trying to convince my brother to let him stay with him, my older sister to let him stay with her. She said, no way. So then he phoned me, tried to talk me into this, right? And he's like, well, I really just want to be with my family, with my children right now. I've heard this before. My dad is very much, he's psychologically ill. So in his mind, he thinks that he's just the best person ever. He's a saint. He's never done anything wrong. None of this stuff was his fault, right? All of the torture that he put on my mother, all of the torture he put on my brothers, and all of the torture he put on us was really not his fault, according to him. He had nothing to do with it, and actually denies a lot of it. But I think it's because he doesn't remember, because my dad was psychologically and is psychologically ill. He was diagnosed mentally ill with psychological disorders and all kinds of stuff, all kinds of neuroses and problems. So I think he wasn't in his right mind, to be honest with you, when he was doing these horrible things. And he used to try to kill himself, run down the freeway in the middle of the night. He used to have manic, hallucinating episodes where he would see the devil, and he would think I was the devil, or he would think that the devil was in the house, and he would scream, and he would see demons, and he would think demons were after him, and all kinds of things like that. So we grew up with that. And so when he called to say he wanted to move up here, tried to convince me that it would be so great, and we could spend time together, and really get to really develop a relationship together as father-daughter. I wanted to hear that. That's what my ears wanted to hear. That's what my heart wanted. I always had longed for restoration, really, within my family. I didn't like to see the destruction of my family. And so for me, it sounded really great, and I was like, well, I was hesitant really, because I told him, I said, well, Dad, let's be real, we don't get along that well, and if our brother's not going to let you stay with him, and our sister's not going to let you stay with her, and you end up staying with me, I mean, you know how it is for me and you, we don't get along that well, and I think, you may really regret the decision. Because, I've got a life, I've got my own life going up here, and I don't know if this is really what you should do. But it's up to you, because I was basically going to open my door to him, and I wasn't going to turn him down. And so, but I wanted to give him sort of a warning that, it may not be all that great of an idea, because we don't get along at all, my dad and myself. Because I spent years trying to protect my mother, whereas my brother, who's living today, actually left the home at 16 years old, took off and was gone, and never did stick around to do anything to try to help the situation. and didn't try to, be the protector in the family or anything. My other brother actually took on that role, the one that was murdered. But this other brother actually took off and left. I don't blame him. He was gone. And that was right about the time the social workers got involved, and he was gone. And my sister, my older sister, who's 5 years older than me, she just lived in her own little world and she didn't try to protect my mother, not one time. Not ever did she ever care about my mother's situation with my dad trying to rape her and trying to force himself on her all the time. And my sister did nothing to try to help her. So my sister was not interested in reality. She lived in her own little world, and things could be going on around her, which they were, and she would just pretend they weren't happening. She was, I believe, she was disassociating because she couldn't handle the trauma, and so I can't blame her either, right? So so these two, I told my dad, I said, they're not going to let you stay with them. You can stay with me, but me and you don't have a great relationship, because my dad and I, because I was living in reality, living in the moment there at the time. I mean, I would try to protect my mom from my dad. Like if I heard my mom screaming at night, I would run in and try to help her, which in turn would get me a beating, because my dad would then either throw me across the room or slap me or take off his belt and beat on me or whatever, right? Like my dad and myself did not get along at all. And as a little kid, I mean, I hit him in the head with my bat one time because I thought he was attacking my mother. I thought he was going to rape her after she had surgery. And so I took my big old pink jumbo plastic bat in behind him and smacked him in the head with it. So my dad never forgot that, and I never did either, because I suffered some serious damage to my back and my neck because of that. But we don't get along. He knows that I know what he did, and he knows that I'm not in denial, and he knows that we've always had enmity. We've always been enemies, really. And so I told him, I said, I don't know if it's such a good idea that you come up here and stay with me. I mean, you can. I'm going to open my door to you, but I don't know if it's a good idea. Well, he thought about it for a week or two. We had some time I had some time too to think about it, and I was kind of thinking, oh, this is great. Like, I was a Christian now, and I was thinking, yeah, my dad, maybe we could read the Bible and we could study the Bible, and we had talked about that on the phone. And I was like, it would be maybe a great thing. We might be able to develop a relationship. And he moved up here. He decided, no, I'm going to do it. So he moved up here. And this was at the age of 44, so it's been a few years now. But he moved in, and immediately, within a matter of 2 weeks, not even 2 weeks, became his old self. He was just the same old dad that I knew before. The abusive, paranoid, totally psychologically disturbed, older, elderly man, that I had been dealing with my whole life. And here he was living in my place, right? And so in 2009, when I started doing these blog talk shows, that was right around the time there that he moved in. I really, at that point, I could not deal with the fact that I had just let my abuser move in with me. My abuser dad. I was like, what was I thinking? Oh my God, Like, he wasn't physically trying to hurt me. He's too old. He's like 90 years old. He was very much going back to that whole psychological abuse, emotional abuse, even some verbal abuse. And he had no intentions on changing. He had no intentions on being, on even trying or attempting to make things right, or trying or attempting to develop some type of relationship with me. He just was going to come up here and be the same old dad that he always was, which was abusive. And so I caught on after a couple of weeks that that's what it was going to be. And our relationship from that point here, when he was staying with me, was really not good. I was harsh. I have a very small apartment, and we were stuck together. And within the first 6 months, I was just about ready to lose my mind. I really didn't have anywhere else to go, and neither did he. My sister wouldn't take him in. My brother wouldn't take him in. I was talking to them, telling them, maybe you could try. Maybe he'd be happier there. He's driving me absolutely crazy. They're like, no, that's why we didn't let him move in with us. We knew that's what would happen. I was like, well, I guess shame on me for thinking, for even beginning to think that there could be any restoration or any renewal in our relationship where we could even develop some type of healthy relationship between each other and with each other, right? So it was absolutely horrible. It was absolutely horrible, and that is really what caused the beginning of my healing journey, because I needed to I couldn't stay silent anymore. I was like, there's no way that this man is going to get away with what he did. There's no way. I cannot let the world, I cannot go to my grave and not say something about what he did to my brothers, what he did to my mother, what he did to our whole family, what he did to me. And he's not going to get away with it. And so while he was living here, I'd come home at night from work and make supper or whatever, and then sit down on the couch and just be like, oh my God, this is really horrific. And I'd start writing my blog, which I started writing Not So Fond Memories Growing Up in an Abusive Home. And I just was posting these public blogs daily pretty much, or at least, 2 or 3 times a week of living underneath this abusive tyrant, really, and my mother. And I thought, there's no way I'm not going to let this go. No, I'm going to get my victory, because I'm going to speak out and I'm going to say something. So this is really the catalyst for where I realized that I needed help and that I really needed somebody to talk to. So I started talking out loud just to get it out, because I thought, man, I can't go to my grave with this stuff. I really can't. And at that point decided that, I didn't care if he was sitting in the next room or not. He's half deaf anyway. And I thought, even if he hears me, I really don't care. This is my home. I'm a 44-year-old woman, and this is my home, and I'm letting him stay here out of the goodness of my heart, and until I can get him out and find him a place, where he can go and do his thing. I have every right to speak out against this. This is absolutely wrong. So while he was sitting, 2 feet away from me, I'd be doing these blog talk shows talking about the abuse and all of the issues, and that all started back there, way back in November 2009. And that's really where it was at. So I started writing this blog first in October, October pretty much, the month before. And then I started speaking out on Blog Talk Radio. I was desperate. I was literally desperate to not be swallowed up by this tyrant who, I had gotten rid of, because I moved 2,000 miles away when I was 30 years old, 29, turning 30. Gotten away from my abusive dad. Then my mother passed away, got away from her abuse. So I was free for a long time, even though I wasn't free in my mind, wasn't free in my heart. I was free away from them, right? And so here I had brought this abuser and allowed him to come back into my life, which threw everything into a huge, I don't know what you want to call it, destructive hurricane, I guess, if you want to call it that. And so I was desperate. I was like, I gotta find some way to get this out, because I cannot sit here and allow this to happen. Because he was manipulating me again and really starting to become abusive, holding knives out at me in the kitchen. I was actually afraid to go to sleep at night. I used to fear him greatly when I was sleeping at night when I was a little kid, because he used to threaten to kill us in the middle of the night. And so he would say, oh, I'm going to kill the family tonight when you're all sleeping. We're all from the devil. You're the devil's seed, and all this. And you'd be having one of his episodes, right, one of his crazy, whatever kind of psychotic episodes he was having. And we'd all go to bed kind of like, oh my God, we better keep half an eyeball out, because he could kill us all. And my mom feared him, and she did say that, she said, I wouldn't put it past him to kill us one night. But would she get herself out? No. Would she get us help? No. She was not. She was determined to, I don't know what, stay with this insane, abusive, crazy man. I don't know why, but I guess it's because she felt like that's all she was ever going to have, and that's all her life was about, and that she couldn't have anything different, even though she was offered a way out many times before. So, I used to sleep with a knife under my bed, because I was thinking, well, it's not going to be me, it's going to be him. Because if he tries to come and kill me, I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight. And that was always my I guess, part of my personality. I can't help it. I was born a fighter. I was born preemie. My mom was probably not eating and not taking care of herself. My dad was probably raping her while I was growing in the womb there. My dad was a sick man, and he was fighting with her and slapping her around, beating her up and stuff. So my mom was not well. And when I was born, I came in preemie at 2 pounds, under 3 pounds, and early. I wasn't supposed to be born until February, and I came in December. They had to actually do a C-section to save me, but they were trying to save my mom because my mom was dying and I was dying. So they were like, well, we'll try to save both, right? So they did. They saved me. So I've been I guess, a fighter all my life, and not so much a person to sit down and take it without saying something or without standing up and saying, no, this is wrong. I've always been a bit of a fighter. But with my dad living here, I was like, I have to, I first of all, because he's a senior, I need to look after him, and I'm not going to be the abuser, right? I'm not going to be the one to hurt him, and I'm not going to be the one to do horrible things to him as he did to me. So I started writing poetry. I started writing, almost completed that blog in a very short period of time, which became the blog that became my book, A Life of Death or Redemption. And so while I'm doing all this, in the back of my mind, I'm trying to figure out how am I going to get him out of here, because he was talking about moving in permanent. He's like, oh, I could move in here and I could stay with you. And I'm like, no. No, you got 1 year, and your year is coming up to an end here pretty soon, and you're going to find a place, right? Well, things got so bad between us, just verbally screaming at each other, that he ended up calling a senior's assistance place and getting a emergency plan put through so that he can get housing, right? So I was very happy about that. And so within the year, actually it took him 1 whole year to get out. And so once he was gone, I tell you, the peace that came back into my life, just because, I couldn't even sleep at night with him here, because I used to barricade my living room, the entryway to the living room, because I don't have a bedroom door. And when he was staying here, he was staying in the bedroom. And so I used to barricade it at night and put stuff in front of it so that if he tried to come over to kill me or something, that he wouldn't be able to get through without me waking up. Because that's the seriousness of the issue. He's not a sane person. He's not thinking properly, And what is just bizarre is that he would never go around and try to kill somebody else. He would never even talk about killing anybody else. He would never even talk about killing somebody else's children. He loves everybody else's children, and he loves kids. But for whatever reason, and I'm not sure if it's just because he hated my mother, and my mother hated him, and the two of them hated each other to the point of, I'm talking not just hate, not just what people might think real, hatred might be. We're talking complete, saturated hatred. We're talking want to kill hatred. They really, it was horrible. Even in their old years, they never really got it together. And, they got so old, there's only so much fighting they could really do. But they continued their animosity and their actual disdain and hatred for each other the whole time. And so, when he moved out, I was like, oh, thank God, because I couldn't believe what I had done. I was like, I can't believe that I would let this guy, this abuser dad, move in and cause me this kind of dilemma. But what it did was it actually forced me to, which I'm glad now, because I don't think I would have actually done much healing work. I don't think I was really going to look at the issues. I wasn't really going to, even though I had begun my healing journey a couple of years earlier, I hadn't really done any real work to try to change some of these coping mechanisms and try to, work on the areas of my life that I needed serious work done in, which was a lot of it self-sabotaging and things like that. A lot of my motives and things that I do are really out of protection and really out of come from a place where I was as a child a long, long time ago. And so I have to, I slowly but surely recognize what they are and then work on fixing them, right? But that's basically where it all started. And I just thought I'd take this show to sort of talk about where it actually began, because I had started my healing journey in 2007, didn't do much work in it, as far as moving along in it. And then this catalyst, really, 2009, really is the catalyst for the beginning of my healing journey, which was to look at the issues, because I couldn't believe that my dad had brought me back into a place of codependent behaviors. I just wasn't coping well. I wasn't coping well at all. And what he did was, I had been away from them for years. And so I had been free from their psychoses and their craziness, both my parents, for many years. And so as an adult, I thought I would be able to handle things, and I thought I was fine. But once he came around, I was that little kid again. I was that really scared and also angry and really screwed up little kid again. And that it put me back to where I was so many years ago. And what it did was cause me a whole lot of grief as far as flashbacks. It caused me a lot of problems with emotions. My emotions were out of whack, out of control again. And I started to realize I had so much work to do. And especially in regards to the child sexual abuse that I suffered, because I never dealt with that. And I knew that I needed to deal with the other stuff first, because I couldn't deal with it all at once. And so what I started to do was methodically go through and start at the beginning and work through the first of all, the physical abuse, and then the emotional abuse, the psychological abuse, the verbal abuse, and what that did, and what that caused me to do, and how my behaviors manifested because of it. And then as an adult, what it was causing me to do, and how it made me, the choices that I would make were really based on choices of a 7-year-old girl, right, who still lives within me, who's still very much a wounded child, right? And so it is quite interesting just to sort of look back on it and see what happened. And so I hope that if you're a survivor and you're having a hard time coping and not dealing well, and things are not looking good for you, it's really important to reach out and get help. Like, no matter what help it is, look for what works for you. Start looking and search and look for those resources out there that seem to fit with what you need, and reach out and get some help. It's really worth it. It's so worth it, because then you're not alone, and you're not in on this on your own. And a lot of times survivors think, because we're so used to having to suffer on our own, especially if you were abused as a child. I mean, you just get used to dealing with things on your own, because you got to go to school the next day. And whether or not you're going to tell your friends is another thing. What happened the day before or the night before, and what your abuser's doing to you or whatever. And many times children will not say anything, and they'll go through and carry it for so long. And as an adult, you just learn how to carry it, and pretty soon it becomes too heavy. The load is just too heavy. I know that's what happened to me at the age of 42. It just became too heavy, and I couldn't deal with it anymore. And I realized I really needed to reach out, and I needed to get some help. And so whatever it is you decide to do, just make sure that you become your own best advocate, like I said on the last show. And that I got from John Bradshaw and other people. You really have to become your own best advocate, because if no one's there to help you to sort of look into these resources and find this information and find out what kind of help you really need, then you need to actually sit down and do that yourself. And you know yourself best, right? We all do. I know myself best. You know yourself best. We should, right? And we need to be honest deep down. I mean, I'm talking brutally honest about the things in our life if we're going to ever make a change. But we also need to be really honest about what type of help that we need, and not go with something that just because somebody else is doing this, or what looks right to one person may not work for another person, right? What looks good for one survivor may not work for another survivor, right? Because we're all different, right? So you have to reach out, and you have to make sure that you continue to look for what works for you, right? So we'll continue on here next week, and thanks everybody for being here. I appreciate having a good friend from Australia here today, Gypsy Witch, and it's nice that she could be here, and I love her dearly. And thanks everybody for tuning in. And if I can get you any information, leave me a message here on Blog Talk Radio. I have all kinds of interesting resources and info that I've collected over the years that you never know may be helpful. If you'd like to share some resources, be sure and drop that information off. And if you want to be on the show, just let me know. Send me a message. I'm usually on Facebook at some point during the week, And I'm around, so if you want to get a hold of me, please do. And whatever you do, take good care of yourself, Like, my big message is never give up. And, I mean, there's a lot of people saying that, and I'm really thankful because that's what really helped me to get through some really tough times. And there's lots of survivors that are in front of me who were there to say, you know what, you can do it. Like, never give up. Just keep going. Keep each day, keep moving. Don't give up because for me, it's not an option. Like, I'm winning this fight. I've already won. Like, actually, I won that. This victory is mine. And so I wish that for everybody, right? So, take good care. God bless you all. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.